A $1 billion secret. Never judge the simple wife. The hook, the irresistible call to action. Stop. Never, ever judge a book by its cover, because that unassuming binding might conceal the most luxurious leather in the world. Subscribe now and like this video for a tale of quiet power and earth-shattering justice. The chandelier blazing above them, a constellation of crystal and gold, cost more than an average house in a quiet suburb. But Chloe Valdez didn't even register its presence. Her eyes, sharp and cold as diamond-tipped drill bits, were locked onto the woman in the simple linen dress. "He told me he was married," Chloe hissed, her voice a cruel, silky purr. But he conveniently neglected to mention his wife was a charity case. She raked her gaze up and down the woman, a predatory assessment. "Tell me, Era, do you buy all your clothes from the church donation bin?" The woman, Era, simply stared back, her heart visibly breaking in her eyes. Her husband, Elias, remained a silent statue, trapped in the crossfire. But what Chloe didn't know, what no one knew, was that the simple woman she so casually mocked could buy that entire building with the spare change she kept in her purse. And her father, was about to make a phone call that would turn Chloe's diamond-studded world into dust. The golden cage. Era Vega found solace in the scent of potting soil. It was earthy, honest, and uncomplicated, a stark contrast to her life within the manicured, sterile confines of Mayfair, London. She knelt in the modest garden tucked behind their four-bedroom colonial house, her hands, free of all jewelry save for a thin, understated gold wedding band, working compost into the rich earth. Her light brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun, a smudge of soil gracing her cheek like a rogue blush. She wore a faded Cambridge University sweatshirt, a relic from her student days, and linen trousers that had clearly seen better days. By all appearances, she was utterly, completely inconsequential. A sleek, predatory black Range Rover AMG, a monument to automotive excess, announced its arrival, sliding into the driveway, its engine emitting a low, discontented growl. Elias Gaston emerged, looking every inch the man Forbes magazine was desperately trying to profile. His suit was a bespoke canali, impeccably tailored to his physique, his watch an Audemars Piguet, and his hair was sculpted to perfection. He glanced at his wife, and a small, familiar muscle in his jaw twitched with barely suppressed irritation. "Era." His voice was strained, tight. He didn't approach, simply loosened his tie, all the while checking his phone as if bracing himself. "We have the Jennings dinner tonight, at 8. Era shielded her eyes with her hand, a gentle smile gracing her lips. "I know, darling. Just finishing up. I thought I'd wear the blue dress, the one you liked." Elias sighed, the sound a clear expression of exasperation. "The blue dress? The cotton one? Era, this is the Marco Blackwood dinner. His wife will be wearing an Oscar de la Renta. Do you want them to laugh at me? Do you actively enjoy making us look like this?" He gestured vaguely at her, at the garden, at the whole scene, his disapproval radiating off him like heat from an open furnace. Era's smile faltered, then faded completely. "Elias, it's just dinner. I thought they wanted to meet me. They want to meet the wife of a future partner." He snapped, his voice sharp and laced with impatience. "They want to see that I come from good stock, that I have a support system, not a gardener." He didn't mean to be so cruel. Or perhaps lately he did. It was becoming increasingly difficult to tell. Elias Gaston was a man drowning in the treacherous currents of ambition. He was a senior VP at Blackwood & Sons, a cutthroat property development firm, and tantalizingly close, just one step away, from a coveted partnership. He had clawed his way up from a modest, middle-class background in Leeds and lived in constant fear of anyone glimpsing the Leeds still clinging to him. He had married Era 5 years ago, meeting her while she volunteered at a soup kitchen, an event his old firm had sponsored for PR. He had been captivated by her kindness, her lack of pretense. He found her simplicity refreshing, a welcome palate cleanser from the demanding, high-maintenance women he usually dated. He inquired about her family, and she simply said, Oh, my father is in logistics. He lives very quietly. Elias envisioned a comfortable middle management life. He envisioned simplicity. But now, 5 years later, her simplicity felt like a heavy stone, dragging him down, hindering his ascent. Just use the Harrods card I gave you, he said, rubbing his temples, as if warding off a headache. Buy some silk and please do something with your hair. He turned and strode inside, his phone already glued to his ear. Marco? Yes, just got in. No, she's thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. See you at 8. Era remained on her knees, the damp earth feeling suddenly cold against her skin. She gazed at her dirt-stained hands. She hadn't lied to Elias. Her father, Lord Julian Rousseau, was in logistics and did live quietly. What she had subtly omitted was that Rousseau VR Maritime, the company her grandfather founded, was one of the largest private shipping and logistics empires on the planet. Her father, Julian, was a recluse, a ghost billionaire who hadn't been photographed in over 20 years. He lived a life of self-imposed isolation on a self-sustaining private island off the coast of Scotland. And Era, his only child, was his sole heir. She had run from that life. She had witnessed firsthand what immense wealth could do, the paranoia, the vulgar opulence, the gnawing emptiness. She had yearned just once to be loved for being Era, not for the Rousseau name, not for a coveted spot on the Forbes list. She had gotten her wish. Elias had loved her. The question that now gnawed at her was, did he still? She rose, brushed off her trousers, and went inside. After a quick shower, she stared at the American Express Centurion black card he had carelessly left on the marble counter. Her father had given it to her when she turned 21. Elias naively assumed it was just one of those high-limit cards for people with good credit. He had absolutely no idea that it had no limit at all. She carefully placed the card back in her simple leather wallet and walked to her wardrobe. She pulled out the blue cotton dress. It was simple, yes, but it was also a Gabriella Hearst, a designer renowned for quiet, sustainable luxury. A dress that cost more than Elias's meticulously tailored suit. She would wear it because she liked it. The restaurant confrontation. The Valda restaurant was the kind of establishment that didn't dare display prices on the menu. Its walls whispered of hushed secrets and discreet deals. Its lighting was carefully crafted to flatter every complexion, and the air hummed with the quiet, terrifying sound of old money. Elias was in hell. Era, true to her word, had worn the blue dress. She looked effortlessly lovely, her hair styled in a simple, elegant bun, her face almost free of makeup, save for a touch of mascara that enhanced her natural beauty. But to Elias she looked dowdy. Marco Blackwood, a bear of a man with a penchant for fake smiles and shark-like eyes, and his wife, Isabella, a thin woman preserved in Chanel and cynicism, were already seated at the table, radiating disdain. Elias, great to see you, Marco boomed, shaking his hand with undue enthusiasm. His eyes slid to Era, an assessing gleam in their depths. And this must be the famous Era, Elias's stabilizing influence. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, Era said, her voice even warm and sincere. Isabella's eyes conducted a slow, calculating scan of Era, from her simple pearl studs to her modest, but undoubtedly expensive Repetto ballet flats. The scan was an execution, delivered with surgical precision. Isabella's smile was a slash of crimson lipstick, a viper ready to strike. Oh, how quaint, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Elias, you didn't tell us she was a minimalist. Elias forced a laugh, the sound strained and unnatural. Era has always been indifferent to labels. How brave, Isabella murmured, signaling a waiter with a flick of her wrist. A bottle of the Petrus 98. Unless you don't drink, she added, her gaze lingering on Era with veiled amusement. Is it all rainwater and herbal infusions? The wine is delicious. Thank you, Era said, completely unperturbed by the woman's blatant rudeness. She was, after all, more than accustomed to women like Isabella. Her father's world was overflowing with them. The dinner was a nightmare of epic proportions. Elias desperately tried to steer the conversation towards his latest project, a massive, high-stakes waterfront development, attempting to impress Marco Blackwood. Marco seemed evasive, but the true performance was being delivered by Isabella. "I'm on the board of the Victoria and Albert Museum Gala this year," Isabella announced, swirling her $6,000 bottle wine with a practiced hand. "It's becoming so boring. The people you have to let in now. The influencers." She shuddered theatrically. "Era, what do you do?" Marco asked, turning to her with a forced smile. "Elias says you enjoy gardening." "I volunteer at the Notting Hill Women's Shelter," Era said calmly. "And I manage a small endowment fund for sustainable agriculture." "Oh, a fund," Isabella said, perking up with thinly veiled interest. "Which one?" "It's private," Era said simply, avoiding revealing any more. "The Elena Foundation." Isabella and Marco exchanged a look, a silent communication that spoke volumes. It was a look of instant disdain, a barely perceptible sneer. A private fund was, in their world, code for unemployed rich girl with a trust fund. She had been labeled minor, insignificant, irrelevant. Elias felt his face burning with shame and frustration. He needed to fix this. He needed to prove that he wasn't married to a simpleton. He needed a miracle, and the miracle arrived in the shape of a hurricane. "Marco, Isabella, darlings." A voice smooth as aged whiskey cut through the restaurant's hushed murmur. A figure materialized, all legs, red-soled Louboutins, and a white Balmain blazer that looked as if it had been surgically stitched directly onto her skin. Her hair was a waterfall of perfectly highlighted salon blonde. Her name was Chloe Valdez. Chloe was a PR consultant, a brand strategist, which was a euphemism for a high-class fixer for the ultra-rich. She knew everyone who mattered, and everyone who mattered knew her. She was also, for the last 6 months, Elias Gaston's mistress. Elias felt the blood drain from his face, leaving him pale and clammy. "Chloe, what a surprise." "Chloe, this is my wife, Era," Elias managed to choke out, his voice strained and unnatural. Chloe's eyes, the color of a glacial lake reflecting a stormy sky, fixed on Era. It wasn't a glance. It was an assessment, the kind a butcher gives a cut of meat before deciding where to make the first incision. She took in the simple cotton dress, the understated hair, the complete lack of flashy jewelry. A slow, cruel smile spread across her perfectly sculpted face. "Oh," she said, her voice dripping with a sickly, condescending sweetness. "This is Era." She extended a perfectly manicured hand, her 20-carat yellow diamond, a gift from a grateful client, flashing in the light like a malevolent star. Era took her hand. Chloe's grip was surprisingly firm, her perfectly shaped nails digging into Era's skin. "Elias talks about you," Chloe purred, never breaking eye contact with Era. "But I must have misheard. I pictured someone else." "I'm sure you did," Era said, smoothly disengaging her hand from Chloe's grasp. "I love your dress," Chloe said, lying with stunning ease. "It's so honest. Where did you find it?" "I've been looking for something simple for my housekeeper's daughter." The table fell silent, the air thick with tension. Isabella Blackwood let out a small, delighted giggle, barely concealing her glee. Marco Blackwood watched with detached amusement, like a spectator at a particularly vicious sporting event. Elias did nothing. He just sat there, frozen in a paralysis of terror and humiliation, staring intently at his wine glass as if it held the secrets to escaping this unfolding nightmare. While this woman, his mistress, publicly savaged his wife, Era looked at Chloe, her face an impassive mask. She looked at Elias, who was staring into his wine glass as if it held the secrets of the universe. And she looked at the Blackwoods, who were watching her like she was the evening's entertainment. She placed her napkin neatly on the table. "You'll have to excuse me," she said, her voice perfectly even, betraying none of the pain she felt churning inside. "I seem to have lost my appetite." She stood up and left, not running, not making a scene, just leaving. Elias made a feeble move to rise, to follow her. But Chloe placed her hand possessively on his thigh under the table, her touch a silent command. "Let her go, darling," she whispered, her voice a purr of promise and possessiveness. "The adults are talking." Elias sat back down, and in that moment he sealed his fate. The affair was no longer a secret. It was a strategy, a weapon. Audience interaction. If you had been in Era's shoes, what would you have done at that moment? Confront Chloe, unleashing a torrent of righteous fury? Or walk out with quiet dignity, plotting your revenge in silence? Comment now and tell me your revenge plan, your extermination campaign. Chloe Valdez didn't do things halfway. She viewed Elias as a project to be meticulously reformed, molded into her vision of success. He had good bone structure, a decent job, and a ravenous ambition that she found deeply alluring. The only thing holding him back from achieving his full potential was his little mouse of a wife. Chloe was there to exterminate the pest, to pave the way for his glorious ascent. She began her campaign with the subtlety of a wrecking ball. "Elias, darling," she would say, leaning provocatively into his office after hours, her perfume leaving a lingering cloud in her wake. "Or you can't get the waterfront deal financed with that mom-and-pop investment group. You need giants. You need Villard." "Villard?" Elias would say, his brow furrowed in concern. "They're a ghost. Nobody can even get a meeting with Julian Russo." "Leave that to me," Chloe purred, her eyes gleaming with confidence. "I know a man who knows the man who serves Julian Russo his coffee." It's a start. She was intoxicating. Everything Era was not. Loud, demanding, connected, and shamelessly materialistic. Elias, weak, and blinded by her allure, fell completely into her orbit. He stopped going home, citing late nights at the office, fueled by ambition and a desperate need to prove himself. He bought a sleek, minimalist city apartment, a pied-a-terre for work, he told Era, his voice laced with guilt and deceit. It was where he and Chloe lived their new, illicit life. Era was not stupid. She was the daughter of a man who could track a single shipping container from Shanghai to Rotterdam in real time, using a network of satellites and informants. She knew what late nights truly meant. She saw the new charges on the Amex statements. Elias still foolishly believed they shared the account, unaware that she was the primary cardholder. Not him. Dolce & Gabbana, Armani, Patek Philippe. Era knew he wasn't buying suits. Le Bernardin a table for two. Cartier a just-un-clou bracelet. Era didn't wear bracelets. She was watching her marriage slowly die, buried beneath a blizzard of extravagant receipts. The real venom, however, was social. Chloe began a systematic campaign to replace Era, erasing her from Elias's life, rewriting their history. She accidentally tagged Elias in intimate Instagram photos from exclusive group dinners. She started showing up at his work events, positioning herself as his official partner, basking in the spotlight. "Oh, Elias is just lost without me," she would laugh to Marco and Isabella Blackwood, her voice dripping with false concern. His wife, bless her heart, just doesn't understand this world. She thinks zoning is something you do in a garden. Elias, to his eternal shame, allowed it to happen. He was winning, propelled forward by Chloe's connections, her influence, and her ruthless ambition. He was making progress on the waterfront project, securing tentative third-party interest from a mysterious ghost corporation he was told was linked to the Villard Group. He was on the cusp of becoming the man he always wanted to be, powerful, successful, admired. The guilt he felt for Era was a small, dull ache, easily ignored, a nagging reminder of the life he was so desperately trying to leave behind. Era, meanwhile, lived in a ghost house, the silence amplified by Elias's absence. The gardener came, the housekeeper cleaned, but the home felt hollow, devoid of warmth and connection. She spent her days at the shelter, offering comfort and support to women in need. Her nights were spent reading, seeking solace in the pages of well-loved books. She was giving him space, waiting for him to come to his senses, hoping against hope that the man she had fallen in love with was still buried beneath the layers of ambition and deceit. The breaking point arrived with a simple package, a careless act that exposed the depth of Elias's betrayal. Era was pruning her roses, the scent of the blooms bittersweet in the air, when a digital truck pulled up to the curb. The driver handed her a large, flat box from Saks Fifth Avenue, a beacon of conspicuous consumption. It was addressed to Ms. Chloe Valdez, care of Elias Gaston, CEO. They were having packages delivered to her home, openly flaunting their affair, their disrespect knowing no bounds. Era's hand, steady and sure, did not tremble as she signed for the package, a mask of calm concealing the storm raging within. She calmly carried the box inside and placed it on the kitchen island, the marble cool beneath her touch. She retrieved a pair of scissors from a drawer and carefully slit the tape. Inside, nestled in layers of tissue paper, was a dress, a stunning silver backless Versace gown, shimmering with sequins that caught the light like captured stars. Tucked into the tissue paper was a small handwritten note on Chloe Valdez's personalized letterhead, the ink a bold, defiant crimson. Dearest E. *, this will be perfect for the awards dinner. Can't wait for everyone to see us, you, me, and this dress. *, it's time. Kisses. * Chloe. The Property Guild Awards dinner. It was next week, the most important night of Elias's career, the culmination of years of relentless work and strategic maneuvering. He was to be honored as a rising star, a visionary, and he was taking Chloe, publicly declaring her as his partner, his future. Era stood in the quiet, sunlit kitchen, the glittering, vulgar dress spilling onto the marble countertop, a tangible symbol of her broken marriage. This wasn't just a late night, a working dinner. This was a declaration, a bold and unapologetic statement. This was a new wife, a replacement. A cold, quiet certainty settled over her, a layer of ice forming over the raw, exposed wound in her heart. The pain was still there, a deep tectonic fissure threatening to swallow her whole, but over it was a layer of pure, glacial ice, a determination that would not be broken. She carefully folded the dress, placed it back in the box, and taped it shut, the sound echoing in the silent kitchen. Then she did something she hadn't done in 5 years, an act that signaled a shift in the balance of power. She picked up her phone and dialed a number not saved in her contacts, a number she knew by heart, etched into her memory. It rang once, twice, the silence punctuated by the rhythmic pulse. The connection was strange, filled with static and the faint echo of distant voices. An old, quiet, impossibly authoritative voice answered, a voice that commanded respect without uttering a single word. "Yes, Papa," Era said, her voice cracking for the first time in years, the carefully constructed facade crumbling. It's Era. I think I need to come home. Just for a while." There was a pause, a long, pregnant silence. The voice on the other end softened, but only just, the undercurrent of power still thrumming beneath the surface. "The Odyssey is refueling in Lisbon. Can be in Mayfair by morning. Will you be ready?" The Odyssey was not a plane. It was her father's 400-foot support vessel, a yacht that looked more like a naval destroyer, a symbol of the Russo Empire's vast reach and influence. "Yes," Era said, her voice regaining its strength, her resolve hardening with each passing second, as she looked at the Saks box sitting on the counter. "Yes, I will." The night of the ghost. The Grand Metropolitan Ballroom was a sea of tuxedos and shimmering sequins, a glittering spectacle of wealth and ambition. It was the Property Guild Awards dinner, the most important night for property magnates in London, and by extension, the world. And tonight, Elias Gaston was the man of the moment, poised on the edge of greatness. He stood by the grand staircase, champagne flute in hand, his Tom Ford tuxedo fitting him like a second skin, accentuating his lean physique. He was, by all accounts, a success, the culmination of years of relentless effort and strategic maneuvering. The waterfront project was on the 5-yard line, a touchdown within reach. His Rising Star award was a lock, and on his arm, radiating confidence and power, was Chloe Valdez. She was a vision in the silver Versace dress, shimmering under the dazzling lights, captivating everyone who entered her orbit. She was gripping his arm possessively, her crimson nails digging slightly into his skin, a silent claim of ownership. She was his ticket to the top. "Look," Darling, she whispered, brushing her hand suggestively across his jawline. This is where you belong. Not in a dusty garden with her. Elias nodded, the champagne and adrenaline coursing through his veins, making him feel bold, invincible. Era was gone. A closed chapter in his life, a faded memory. He had come home 2 days before to an empty house, the silence deafening. Just a note on the kitchen counter, a hastily scribbled farewell. Asterisk Elias, I've gone home to my father's for a while. He had felt a brief pang of guilt, a fleeting moment of regret, but quickly followed relief. It was perfect. She had quietly retreated, avoiding a messy confrontation, sparing him the drama and the pain. No shouting, no tears, just quiet. Era fading away. He wouldn't even have to fight her for the house. He'd just let her have it. He was moving up, climbing the ladder of success, and no one was going to stop him. You're right, he told Chloe, pulling her closer, the scent of her expensive perfume intoxicating him. This is my life. Marco and Isabella Blackwood glided over to them, their smiles radiating approval. Elias, Chloe, you look perfect together. Isabella gushed, her eyes openly admiring Chloe's high-voltage glamour. Just perfect. We think so too, Chloe said, smiling confidently, basking in their praise. And then, the temperature in the room plummeted, a sudden chill that made the hairs on the back of Elias's neck stand on end. The hum of conversation near the main entrance didn't just quiet. It stopped, as if someone had flipped a switch, silencing the cacophony. A ripple of silence spread across the ballroom, a palpable vacuum that moved inexorably toward the center of the room, drawing all eyes to the unfolding drama. Elias turned, his heart pounding in his chest, a premonition of disaster gripping him. What's happening? In the doorway, a woman was standing, bathed in the soft glow of the ambient light. She wore no sequins, no Versace, no ostentatious displays of wealth. She wore a simple black high-neck, long-sleeve dress, a study in minimalist elegance. It was classic, understated, elegant, and it cost more than Chloe's entire outfit. Her hair was pulled back into a severe, glossy bun, framing her face, accentuating her striking features. Her only jewelry was the simple gold wedding band on her ring finger, a silent declaration of commitment. It was Era, but it wasn't the Era he knew, the Era he had dismissed as simple and inconsequential. The unassuming gardener wife was gone, replaced by someone else. This woman was regal, possessing an innate grace and authority that commanded attention. She looked like a queen, a judge, a force to be reckoned with. Elias's champagne flute slipped from his grasp, shattering on the marble floor, the sound lost in the sudden hush that had fallen over the room. My God! Chloe's head snapped around, her perfectly made-up face contorting into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. What is she doing here? Era began to walk, her steps measured and deliberate, her gaze unwavering. Not toward Elias, not toward the bar, not toward anyone who might offer comfort or support. She walked directly toward the small roped-off VIP section where Marco Blackwood, Elias, and Chloe were standing, a silent force of nature. As she approached, people didn't just step aside. They parted, creating a path for her, their eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity, awe, and trepidation. She stopped a few feet away, her presence radiating an aura of quiet power. She looked directly at Marco Blackwood, her gaze steady and unwavering. Marco, Isabella, lovely to see you again. Marco Blackwood, who had built his entire empire on bluster and intimidation, was rendered speechless. He just nodded, his eyes wide with disbelief. Era turned to Elias, her expression unreadable. Her eyes were not angry, not sad, not accusing. They were empty. Elias, Era, what are you doing? He stammered, his voice barely a whisper. You left. You went to your father's. I'm here for my award, Era said, her voice clear and authoritative in the sudden silence, cutting through the tension like a shard of ice. Your award? Chloe laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that shattered the fragile silence. "What award, darling? Best in show for a petunia?" Era ignored her, her attention fixed on Elias. "I am accepting the Philanthropist of the Year award tonight on behalf of the Elena Foundation." Elias's mind went blank, his thoughts scattering like leaves in a storm. The Elena Foundation, the hobby fund, the pet project he had so casually dismissed as inconsequential. "Wait," Isabella Blackwood said, her voice suddenly small, almost pleading. "The Elena Foundation, as in, the foundation that just anonymously donated $100 million to the National Gallery?" "That foundation," Era said simply, her gaze unwavering. Chloe, sensing her grasp on Elias slipping away, stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. She was taller than Era, and she used her height as a weapon, towering over her in a show of dominance. "This is pathetic," Chloe hissed, her voice low and vicious, spitting venom. "Even for you. You bought your way into an awards dinner. You put on a grown-up dress to try and win him back." She grabbed Era's arm, her fingers digging into her skin. "Listen to me, mouse," she hissed, her voice laced with contempt. "He doesn't want you. Nobody wants you. You are nothing. You are just a small, simple, boring woman. You have no family, no connections, no power." She was on a roll now, fueled by jealousy and rage, her voice rising, drawing everyone in, feeding off the attention. "Elias needs a star," she spat, stabbing a finger into Era's chest. "He needs a warrior. He needs me. And you are just the sad little wife he was smart enough to finally get rid of." She sneered, her gaze sweeping over Era's simple black dress, dismissing it with disdain. "I mean, look at you. You thought this made you look powerful? You just look poor. You look like his mistake." Era stood there, absorbing the tirade, unflinching. She did not flinch, she did not cry, she did not retaliate. When Chloe finally finished, breathing hard in her triumph, Era very calmly reached up and removed Chloe's hand from her arm, her touch surprisingly gentle. She looked at Elias, his face ashen, his body trembling, a picture of fear and regret. "She's right, Elias," Era said, her voice soft but firm, resonating with a newfound strength. "You need a warrior." Then she turned to Chloe, her eyes meeting hers, a chillingly cold authority in her gaze. "And you have made a terrible, terrible mistake." "The only mistake," Chloe scoffed, her confidence momentarily faltering, "was Elias marrying you in the first place." "No," Era said, a new authority in her voice, an undeniable power that silenced the room. "The mistake was assuming I was the one out of his league." At that precise moment, the stage lights dimmed, casting the room in a dramatic glow. The guild president walked to the podium, his presence commanding attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed, amplified by the microphone, filling the ballroom. "We have a very special guest tonight, a man who, for decades, has been one of the most powerful invisible forces in the world. Tonight, to present our Philanthropist of the Year award to the Elena Foundation, he is making his first public appearance in 20 years. Please welcome Lord Julian Russo." Chloe's triumphant smile froze on her face, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. Elias's world tilted on its axis, the ground shifting beneath his feet. "Russo, as in Russo VR Maritime. The ghost." The name hammered in his head, echoing the destruction of his shattered dreams. Russo. Era's father's name, the logistics, the quiet guy. Chloe Valdez's blood had turned to ice water, freezing her from the inside out. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. It was the name that backed governments, that controlled vast empires, that could make or break entire industries with a single phone call. He looked at Chloe, her face now a mask of confusion and fear. He looked at Era, who was watching the stage with a quiet, sad resignation. And he looked toward the side of the stage, where a tall, lean man in an impeccably simple dark suit walked out, his face like a bird of prey, his eyes piercing and cold. Elias Gaston only had time to whisper one word before his legs gave out, and he crumpled to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. "Oh no!" The man who walked onto the stage wasn't just a man. He was a legend, a force of nature. Julian Russo was the type of person who didn't enter a room. He absorbed it. The air grew thinner, the temperature dropped, and the light seemed to bend toward him, as if drawn by an unseen gravitational pull. He was perhaps 60, with a shock of silver hair and eyes so pale blue they looked like shards of ice. He moved with an economy of motion that suggested immense coiled power, a predator surveying his domain. He didn't look at the crowd, he didn't smile. In the ballroom, billionaires and property titans, men who considered themselves masters of the universe, were fumbling for their phones, their composure shattered. They were taking photos of a ghost, documenting a moment that would be etched in their memories forever. Elias Gaston wasn't breathing. He was hyperventilating, suffocating under the weight of his colossal miscalculation. Russo, Era's father, the logistics, the quiet guy. Chloe Valdez's blood had turned to liquid nitrogen, freezing her solid. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. It was the name that backed governments, that could topple economies with a single stroke of a pen. It was the name that owned the ports, the name that Elias's waterfront project desperately needed access to. What? Chloe sputtered, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows arching in disbelief. Her venomous gaze darted from the charismatic man on stage to Era, who stood serene amidst the chaos. That can't be. The color drained from Chloe's face, her expression shifting from triumphant malice to bewildered horror. Julian Russo, a figure of immense power and quiet influence, reached the podium. He adjusted the microphone, the amplified click echoing like a gunshot in the suddenly silent room, a sonic boom that silenced the buzzing whispers. "Good evening," he began, his voice a low, resonant timbre that commanded attention without needing to shout. It was the voice of a man accustomed to being heard, a man whose words carried weight. "I was asked to come here to present an award. I don't like awards. I don't like events." His eyes, sharp and piercing, swept across the room, pausing for a fraction of a second as they met Elias's. In that brief, intense moment, Elias felt the gaze like a physical blow, an icy shard piercing his chest, leaving him breathless. "But," Russo continued, his tone softening slightly, "the Elena Foundation is important. It is named after my late wife, Elena. It is an organization dedicated to the principle that real strength is not loud, that real power is not seen. It is felt." He paused, allowing his words to sink in, the silence amplifying their impact. "The anonymous founder and director of this $50 billion fund is my daughter, a woman who for her entire life has chosen quiet service over the noise of wealth. A woman who wanted to be loved for who she was, not what she had." He turned, his gaze locking directly onto Era, a father's pride evident in his eyes. Era Russo. The name resonated in the room, each syllable hammering home the truth, shattering the carefully constructed illusions. Era Russo. Isabella Blackwood, her face paling, let out a small, choked gasp, her trembling hand knocking over her water glass, sending a cascade of water across the table. Marco Blackwood, his face flushed and beads of sweat forming on his brow, looked as though he was about to succumb to a massive heart attack. Chloe, who moments before had been radiating smug satisfaction, was now visibly shaking, her face a concave mask of raw, unadulterated terror. "Please," Julian said, his voice regaining its authoritative edge. "My daughter, Era." Era walked past Chloe and Elias, who stood frozen, petrified like statues in a Pompeii of their own arrogant creation. She did not acknowledge them, her focus unwavering. She ascended the steps to the stage and stood beside her father, her presence radiating quiet strength. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "They mock your simplicity, Era," he whispered, his words meant for her ears alone. "They mock it because they cannot buy it." Era accepted the heavy crystal award, its weight a testament to the burden of her family's legacy. She walked to the microphone, her movements graceful and self-assured. "Thank you," she said, her voice clear and strong. resonating with newfound confidence. "Thank you, Father." She gazed out at the stunned audience, her eyes reflecting a quiet determination. "My father is right. I have always preferred quiet. I believe what you do matters more than what you wear, that your character is more important than your connections." A subtle shift in her stance, a sharpening of her gaze. "For the last 5 years, I have been conducting an experiment to see if that was true." Her eyes found Elias, the man who had sworn to love and cherish her, the man who had been so blinded by ambition that he hadn't seen the true power that lay beneath her simple exterior. Elias flinched as if she had struck him, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. "My husband, Elias Gaston." A pause, a beat of silence before she continued. "He did not know the extent of my family's logistics business. He wanted to love me, Era, the gardener, the woman in the simple cotton dress." A single tear escaped, tracing a glistening path down her cheek, a testament to the pain of betrayal. She did not wipe it away, allowing it to serve as a silent punctuation mark. "The experiment has concluded." Her gaze shifted to Chloe Valdez, the architect of her public humiliation, the woman who had so gleefully orchestrated her downfall. Her voice did not rise, it didn't need to. It was a low, steady, and unwavering declaration. "I am simple. I am plain. I have no connections." She paused, letting her words hang in the air, each one a carefully placed stiletto. "And you, Ms. Valdez," she said, her voice dripping with quiet disdain. "You are a very poor judge of character." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You see, you mocked my clothes, but you failed to realize my foundation owns the bank that holds the debt on Versace. You mocked my hobby, but my hobby just financed the entire cancer wing your gala was trying to raise money for." Her gaze swept across the VIP table, taking in the stunned faces, the carefully constructed facades of wealth and power crumbling before her eyes. "You all live in a world of appearance. You swim in a world of power, but you don't even know what real power is." She lowered her voice to a whisper, drawing everyone in, the silence amplifying her words. "Real power is choice, and tonight, I am choosing." She turned to her husband, the architect of his own demise. "Elias, you're fired." Elias's jaw dropped, his carefully rehearsed composure shattering. "What? You can't fire me. You don't." He looked desperately at Marco Blackwood, seeking support, a lifeline in the storm, but Marco Blackwood was staring at Julian Russo, his face slick with nervous sweat, his eyes wide with a dawning realization of the extent of his folly. "She can indeed," Russo said, stepping to the microphone again, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "As of 4:30 this afternoon, the Elena Foundation via VIPA, a subsidiary, completed a leveraged buyout of Blackwood and Sons. My daughter is your new chief, or she was." The room erupted in a cacophony of gasps, whispers, and stunned exclamations. Elias Gaston collapsed, his legs giving way beneath him, his body slumping onto the carpet in a heap of ruined ambition, his $5,000 tuxedo a pathetic symbol of his shattered dreams. He didn't faint. He simply folded, the weight of his arrogance crushing him. Chloe Valdez, however, did not collapse. She stood shaking, her face as white as the silk tablecloths, her eyes wide with disbelief and a desperate, clawing fear. She looked at Julian Russo, her voice a hoarse, desperate plea. "Lord Russo, I am an asset. This was a misunderstanding. I can help you. I can handle your PR. This I can fix." Julian Russo looked at her, his expression devoid of emotion, as one might look at an insignificant insect. "Ms. Valdez," he said, his voice flat and cold, devoid of any warmth or compassion. "You are a brand strategy practitioner, are you not?" Yes, the best," she cried, sensing a fragile lifeline. "Then you should know," he said, his voice a silken threat, "that the Russo name does not have a brand. It has a reputation, and you have offended it." He snapped his fingers, a subtle, dismissive gesture. Without even looking, Two men in identical dark suits materialized, their movements precise and silent. "Miss Valdez is loud," Julian said to no one in particular. "She is disrupting my daughter's evening. Please ensure she finds her way out." "No, no," Chloe shrieked as the men grabbed her arms, their grip unyielding. "You can't do this. Elias, Elias, do something." But Elias was still on the floor, weeping, his face buried in the plush carpet. "I know people," she yelled as she was dragged away, the silver Versace dress ripping, a symbol of her crumbling empire. "I have connections." "So do I," Era said, her voice barely a whisper as she watched the woman who had sought to destroy her being physically removed from the ballroom. Her fall from grace a spectacle for all to witness. 6 months later, the silent dismantling. The downfall wasn't a storm. It wasn't a chaotic, emotional explosion. It was a clinical, silent, and terrifyingly efficient dismantling. Julian Russo didn't operate on anger. He operated on consequence. In the 48 hours following the Property Guild Awards dinner, 2 lives were not just ruined. They were deconstructed piece by piece until nothing was left but the rubble of their own arrogance. The reckoning of Elias Gaston. For Elias Gaston, the reckoning began with the sunrise. He woke up not in his bed or Chloe's, but on a stiff velvet tapestried sofa in a secluded alcove of the Grand Metropolitan's main lobby. His head throbbed, a dull, hammering ache from the champagne, the adrenaline, and the crushing shock of his own stupidity. His Tom Ford tuxedo was wrinkled, the untied bow tie hanging around his neck like a small silk noose. A security guard, seeing him stir, walked over and placed a glass of water on the table beside him. "Your car is no longer here, Mr. Gaston," the guard said, his face a mask of professional neutrality. "It was recovered by the leasing agency at 4:17 a.m. "Recovered?" Elias croaked, his voice hoarse and disoriented. "That's the leases. You should check your phone, sir," the guard said, his tone polite but firm, and left. He fumbled for the iPhone 15 Pro Max that Chloe had insisted he buy, a symbol of his newfound status. It was hot to the touch, buzzing with a relentless stream of notifications. The screen lit up, 147 unread messages, 28 missed calls. He was still in a fog, a haze of denial. This was a nightmare, he thought, * a horrible public embarrassment. He'd fix it. He'd apologize. Era, she was kind. She was simple. She would forgive him. He just had to humble himself. His trembling thumb opened the first missed call. A voicemail from Marco Blackwood left at 11:52 p.m. Elias hit playback. He expected shouting, a tirade of rage. He didn't expect the sound of pure, unadulterated terror. "Elias, you idiot. You monumental fool. Do you know what you've done? Do you know who that Russo is? He doesn't just own banks, Elias. He owns the ports. He owns the banks. He owns—" "Oh God." A sound of glass breaking echoed through the speaker. "Don't come into the office, ever. We'll mail your personal effects. Your severance is nothing. You're in breach. You humiliated a principal. If you ever contact me again, I'll have you arrested for harassment. You're finished. You've ruined me, Elias. You've ruined me." The call cut off abruptly. Elias stared at the phone, his mind reeling. Ruined. He scrolled through his inbox. Email. The first one was from the Commercial Lending Division of Villard National Bank, sent at 10:04 a.m. Subject: Notice of Immediate Covenant Default. Mortgage Loan. Dear Mr. Gaston, this email serves as official notification that per your loan agreement, you are in breach of covenant, moral turpitude violation as defined by lender, resulting in significant public disgrace and material risk to the lender's reputation. Your $2.5 million line of credit has been frozen with immediate effect. Furthermore, your primary mortgage on the Mayfair property, 45 Willow Lane, has been called. Full repayment must be made within 30 days or foreclosure proceedings will commence. Willard National Bank. The signature block read, Russo. It wasn't just a bank. It was his bank, The bank he had been using so arrogantly to fund his new life, his lavish lifestyle, his affair. His hands shook so hard he almost dropped the phone. The second email was from a name he didn't recognize. S. Argu, Wakeekman, Lipman and Rosales, sent at 6:15 a.m. Subject: Gaston versus Russo. Mr. Gaston, do not attempt under any circumstances to contact our client, Ms. Alara Russo. Any attempt will be viewed as harassment. Divorce papers will be served to you at the end of the day. Our client is being exceptionally generous. She will not contest the prenuptial agreement you yourself drafted and insisted upon. The prenuptial agreement. Elias's stomach turned to acid. He remembered that day 5 years ago in his old, modest law office. He had presented it to her, feeling so clever, so protective of his future earnings. The agreement was simple. In the event of divorce, each party would leave with what they brought into the marriage. Era, he thought, had brought a small trust fund, her hobby foundation. He had brought $80,000 in student loan debt and a leased Mercedes. He had, in his towering arrogance, built a legal fortress to protect his millions in progress from her $50 billion. He wasn't just ruined. He was bankrupt. He was less than bankrupt. He staggered out of the lobby, the morning light feeling like a physical assault, a cruel reminder of his shattered illusions. The doorman didn't look at him. He hailed a cab, paid cash. He realized with a pang of panic, checking his wallet, that he had only the last $300 to his name, and gave the driver the address of the penthouse, his love nest. He'd pick up his things. He'd figure this out. He walked into the gleaming marble lobby of the building. Mikhail, the doorman who had pocketed Elias's £100 bribes for 6 months, was at the desk. He didn't smile, didn't even look up. "Mr. Gaston," Mikhail said, his voice flat, devoid of any warmth or recognition. "Mikhail, I just need to go up," Elias said, walking toward the elevator, trying to maintain a semblance of authority. I live here." "No, sir. You stayed here. The landlord has rescinded your access." "The landlord? I pay the rent." "No, sir. The rent was paid in full for 1 year by the Elena Foundation. As of 7 a.m. This morning, your key fob has been deactivated, and you have been flagged as a security non-admit risk." Elias stared, dumbfounded, the full extent of his humiliation sinking in. He had been living in his apartment. He had been conducting his affair with his mistress, in a property owned by his wife. The pure, cold, calculated patience of it all was horrifying. My things," he stammered, "are being packed, sir. They will be mailed to your last known permanent address. The house in Mayfair, the one the bank was about to take." He was literally on the street in a dirty tuxedo with $300 in his pocket. The morning smells of the city, hot garbage, street cart pretzels, bus fumes, hit him like a physical blow. This was his new reality. The erasure of Chloe Valdez. For Chloe Valdez, the destruction was more artistic, a brutal act of digital and social obliteration. She woke up in her all-white penthouse, the Versace dress a ripped, silver heap on the floor. She woke up to her phone ringing, a relentless, insistent beeping. She grabbed it, her head pounding, her throat dry. It was Ricardo from page 6. "Chloe, darling, talk to me." Ricardo's voice was euphoric, dripping with schadenfreude. "It's true. You were forcibly removed. We have photos, Chloe. Photos of you being dragged out. My God. That Versace was shredded. Who was he? That old guy. It was Julian Russo. You insulted Julian Russo's daughter." Chloe's blood turned to ice water. She hung up, her mind racing. This is fine. This is spin. She was Chloe Valdez. She created narratives. She would get ahead of this. She went to her war room, her sleek white lacquer desk and laptop, ready to craft a narrative. A spin, a tale of misunderstanding, a passionate night gone awry. She tried to log into her Instagram. Chloe Valdez. Error. Account not found. She let out a short, hysterical laugh. A glitch. It had to be a glitch. She tried Twitter. This account has been suspended for violating our terms of service. The panic? cold and sharp, pricked her skin. Her website, Chloe Valdez PR. Comstar. She typed it in. A blank white screen. 404 not found. This wasn't a blacklist. This was an erasure. Russo hadn't just fired her. He had reached into the digital ether and deleted her, wiping her existence from the online world. The brand of Chloe Valdez had ceased to exist. Her clients, she could fix this. She called her biggest account the Guggenheim Gala. She was put on hold with a petulant voice assistant. Ms. Valdez? Yes. We are pivoting our brand strategy. Your services are no longer required. Click. She called the Governor's Ball Committee. We've decided to go in a different direction. Please forward your final invoice. The final call. Her bank. She had to move her money, protect her assets. She checked her private client app. Chase account frozen. Please contact your branch manager. She called the number, screaming at the poor receptionist until her private manager, Mr. Blasco, came on the line. Mr. Blasco, what is this? Why is my account frozen? The man on the other end was audibly shaking. Ms. Valdez, I'm so sorry. I can't. My hands are tied. All your assets, all your lines of credit. They are all frozen. By who? By the federal government. The what? Chloe sank onto her white silk couch, her legs giving way beneath her. An investigation? Ms. Valdez, the IRS, the SEC. It appears a concerned citizen provided an anonymous tip to the Southern District of New York around 3 a.m. A tip about what? She shrieked, her voice cracking with terror. Tax fraud? Wire fraud? Misrepresentation of assets? Undeclared gifts from clients? It's all here. This is very detailed, Miss Valdez. It was all the gray area, shady work she had done to build her empire. The cash gifts, the offshore consulting fees, the client gifts she had never declared as income. Russo hadn't framed her. He had simply exposed her, revealing the rotten core beneath the shiny facade. She looked around her pristine white penthouse, the Balmain blazers in the closet, the 40 pairs of Louis Vuitton. They weren't hers. They were all bought on credit, leveraged against a brand that had just evaporated. She wasn't rich. She was just a woman who was good at pretending. She was, in a word, simple, and she was, in every important way, finished. The final score. 6 months later, the downfall was not a storm. It was not a chaotic, emotional explosion. It was a clinical, silent, and terrifyingly efficient dismantling. Julian Russo didn't operate on anger. He operated on consequence. For the antagonists, the consequences were as public as their ambition had been. Clear's throat, the federal investigation of Chloe Valdez, was swift and brutal. Faced with irrefutable, meticulously organized evidence of tax fraud, wire fraud, and undeclared income, she was crushed. Her lawyers, who demanded a retainer she no longer had, advised her to plead guilty. She lost everything. The penthouse, the Balmain, the credit lines, all seized by the government to pay a fraction of her fines and back taxes. She was banned from working in PR, finance, or any consulting capacity for life. She was last seen and photographed by the very page 6 she used to feed, working at the fragrance counter of Harrods department store. Her blonde hair, now showing dark roots, was pulled back in a regulation ponytail. Her hands, once adorned with yellow diamonds, were now chapped from spraying eau de parfum on paper strips. She wore a black polyester uniform and a plastic name tag reading Chloe. The ultimate humiliation was not the job. It was the visibility. Shoppers, women who used to read about her, would pause, stare, and whisper. She had become what she feared most. A common spectacle, a simple charity case. Elias Gaston's fall was quieter, but deeper. The 30-day notice on his mortgage was not a negotiation. It was a death sentence. The prenuptial agreement he had so arrogantly drafted was his financial execution. He walked out of the marriage with his student loan debt, which had grown with interest, and the clothes on his back. The Centurion Amex card was, of course, canceled. His own credit, tied to the non-payments, was destroyed. No one in the London property sector returned his calls. The name Gaston was now synonymous with the Rousseau warning. He was radioactive. After 2 months of sleeping on a friend's couch, a friend who quickly tired of the association, he found a job. The irony was a cruel cosmic joke. He was hired as a logistics manager for a regional curtain rod distributor in a windowless industrial park in Slough. He managed spreadsheets in a cramped cubicle under fluorescent light, tracking the very things he once mocked. He had become his own sneering, false vision of Era's father. He was a simple, quiet man in logistics. He spent his nights in a tiny, damp studio apartment, drinking cheap whiskey and looking at a single photo on his phone. Era in her garden, laughing. The protagonist's aftermath. The after was not an ending. It was an activation. Elara Rousseau sat at the head of a gleaming 30-foot slab of polished obsidian. It was a conference table on the 102nd floor of the Shard, the North American headquarters of Rousseau Viard Maritime. She was not the gardener wife, nor was she the black dress avenging angel. She was something new. She wore a simple cream Loro Piana cashmere sweater and tailored linen trousers. Her hair was pulled back, revealing the sharp, intelligent lines of her face. She looked simple, but it was the simplicity of a blade honed and ready. Across from her sat the new, terrified executive suite of what used to be Blackwood & Sons. She hadn't just bought the firm. She had gutted, dissolved, and reformed it as the Elena Development Group. "Good morning," she said, her voice quiet. But the acoustics of the room were so perfect that it felt as if she was whispering in each of their ears. A chillingly intimate experience. The waterfront project is dead. A man named Thomas, a remnant of Marco Blackwood's old guard, cleared his throat nervously. Ms. Rousseau, with clears throat. Respect, that project is 90% financed. The zoning is clear. It's a guaranteed $4 billion return. Era looked at him, her gaze not cold but clinical, dissecting his motives with surgical precision. "Thomas, are you still thinking in terms of profit? I am thinking in terms of function. That project was a monument to noise. It was designed to be seen. We are now in the business of doing." She clicked a remote. The massive screen behind her lit up. It was not a rendering of glass towers and luxury condos. It was a map, a community, a tapestry of human lives. As of today, the Elena Foundation is the sole investor in the Elena Development Group. We are no longer building 80-story luxury tombs for foreign capital. We are building a community. She pointed to the screen, her voice firm and unwavering. The entire waterfront area, blocks 1 through 6, will be zero-income housing, fully subsidized by the foundation. The next 10 blocks will be mixed-use affordable housing for teachers, nurses, and artists. The luxury component, she said, pointing to a single, sleek tower, will be this one, and 100% of its profit will be placed into an untraceable trust to permanently fund the Tooting Women's Shelter. Thomas looked like he was going to vomit. "But, Ms. Rousseau, that's philanthropy. That's not a business model." "No, Thomas," Era said, standing. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the tiny, intricate city map spread out below. "It's a system change. My ex-husband." Her voice was clear, devoid of any bitterness. "Wanted to take. He wanted to be seen. My father moves things. He is the best in the world at moving a box from Shanghai to Rotterdam. He built an empire on things." She turned, her eyes sweeping her new board, her gaze unwavering. She said, her voice ringing with newfound purpose. "Am going to move systems." She had made her choice. She was still, in essence, a gardener. She still loved the smell of potting soil, the feel of earth beneath her fingernails. But she had learned a crucial lesson, taught to her by the vipers she had invited into her home. You cannot simply tend your little patch of dirt and hope to protect it from the blight. For things to truly grow, you have to control the water. You have to guarantee the sun. You have to be the weather. Era Rousseau, the simple wife, was finished tending her garden. She was about to terraform the entire coastline, reshaping the landscape of power and influence, one seed at a time. conclusion and final call to action. And that, dear friends, is what happens when you mistake quiet for weakness. Chloe and Elias built their lives on shiny, hollow surfaces. And the second they collided with something real, something solid, their entire world shattered. Era's simplicity wasn't a lack of anything. It was a presence. It was the confidence of someone who has nothing to prove because they own everything. So what do you think? Was Era too kind for too long? Or was her final, devastating move the perfect answer? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all. This story is a reminder to never judge a book by its cover, because you have no idea if that simple cover is actually bound in the most expensive leather in the world. If you love this drama and this twist, please, you know what to do. Hit that like button so hard it turns red. Click share to send this to someone who needs a reminder that a high-profile life is not always a happy life. And most importantly, subscribe to this channel and tap that bell. We publish stories of karma, revenge, and justice every week, and you don't want to miss what comes next.